First time it knocked, I thought it was just the neighbors. It was a little past midnight, that strange hour when the city feels half asleep but not fully dead. I was lying on the couch, the TV glowing quietly, volume low, so I wouldn't get another complaint from Mrs. Keller in 3B. My phone said 12:07 a.m. when it happened. 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. I glanced at the door automatically. I wasn't expecting anyone. My friends knew better than to show up unannounced, especially this late. For a few seconds, I stayed frozen, waiting for another sound. Nothing followed, no footsteps in the hall, no muffled voices. I hesitated, then got up and walked over to the peephole. Empty hallway. Same ugly wallpaper, same flickering light above the stairs. The corridor was deserted. I stayed there. I pressed to the peephole for far longer than I needed to. Only when I started to feel stupid did I pull away. Probably some drunk idiot knocking on the wrong door, I told myself. I locked the deadbolt again, just in case. Then I went to bed. If I had listened more carefully, maybe I would have noticed that the sound of the knocks hadn't echoed like they usually do in the stairwell. It had sounded closer, as if it came from the door, and only the door. The second night, I remembered it. You know, the way a bad dream waits on the edge of your mind all day and only jumps out when it gets dark. I made myself a coffee around 10, telling myself I would definitely go to sleep early this time. By 11:30, I was still scrolling on my phone, brightness low, lying in the same spot on the couch as the night before. I kept checking the time. 11:43, 11:251, 11:259. Midnight came and went. Nothing. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. See? Just neighbors. Just noise. I turned on my side and tried to convince myself I wasn't disappointed in my own fear. At 12:04 a.m., it came again. 3 knocks. Same rhythm. Knock, knock, knock. The mug in my hand rattled against the saucer. This time, the sound wasn't just noise. It was familiar. The same weight behind it. The same uncomfortable pause between each strike. I didn't move at first. The apartment suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. I swallowed, then forced myself up, each step toward the door feeling like a step toward something I shouldn't see. I looked through the peephole, empty. Same empty corridor, same flickering light, but now I noticed something that made my skin prickle. The hallway light wasn't just flickering, it was pulsing, slowly dimming, then brightening again in a lazy, unnatural rhythm, as if it were breathing. I backed away from the door this time. I didn't open it, didn't call out. I just went back to the couch and sat down, staring at the blank TV screen. I stayed that way for nearly an hour, listening. No more knocks came, but from that moment, the apartment didn't feel like mine anymore. On a third night, I told myself I was ready. I turned off the TV at 11. I switched off all the lights except the one in the kitchen and sat by the table with my back against the wall, facing the front door. I didn't know what I expected to see: some drunk neighbor, a bored teenager, a prank, but the not knowing had become worse than anything I could imagine. My phone lay on the table, its screen dark. I watched the red digits of the microwave clock as they crawled toward midnight. 11:58, 11:59, 12 o'clock, nothing. 12:01, silence. The building was unusually quiet. Even the usual hum of pipes and distant TVs seemed to be holding its breath. 12:02, the first knock nearly stopped my heart. Knock, knock, knock. This time it was louder. There was a weight behind it that made the wood tremble faintly. The sound carried through the whole apartment, leaving a faint vibrating echo in its wake. I stood up very slowly. My bare feet felt suddenly cold against the kitchen tiles. I walked toward the door like someone moving underwater. Halfway there, I stopped. Something was wrong. The knocking wasn't coming from the outside of the door. It sounded like it was coming from the middle, not the hallway side, not my side, somewhere in between, as if someone were tapping on the exact thickness of the wood itself. That was impossible, of course, but the idea rooted itself in my brain and wouldn't leave. I forced myself forward anyway. I pressed my eye to the peephole. At first it looked empty, but then I realized the opposite wall was missing, where there should have been wallpaper, and the railing by the stairs. The view was just darkness, thick and absolute. No light, no shapes, no corridor, just a black void that seemed too close. I leaned back, heart racing, then looked again. The corridor was there now, exactly as it should be. The old wallpaper, the flickering light, the the stairs going up. I blinked a few times, trying to justify what I'd just seen. Maybe my eyes hadn't adjusted. Maybe the light had gone fully out for a moment. Anything. Then as I watched, something moved at the very edge of the fisheye glass. A shape, flat and pale, sliding up from below, as if someone had been lying flat against my door and was slowly unfolding, rising, their face scraping its way upward. I froze. An eye slid into view, not close to the peephole pressed to it. So close, the iris was distorted by the glass. It was too large, too wet. The white of it was slightly yellowed, veins too dark, like bruises. The pupil expanded slowly, as if it were trying to drink in the dim light from my apartment. I blinked once. The knock came again, right next to my face. Knock, 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 I screamed and stumbled back, my shoulder slamming into the wall. My phone clattered to the floor. From the other side of the door, a voice spoke. Let me in. 3 words. Flat, calm, wrong. There was something slightly off about the way the syllables came out, like a recording played at a slightly incorrect speed. It didn't sound angry or desperate. If anything, it sounded curious. Let me in, it repeated. The doorknob began to turn. Once, twice, testing the lock. The metal creaked in its socket. I backed away until my legs hit the couch. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands, but I didn't call anyone. What was I supposed to say? There's something with a giant eye asking to come in. The voice spoke again, a little softer, as if trying out a new tone. Please, let me in. I don't know how long I stood there, paralyzed, until the knocking stopped. The silence that followed was almost worse. Eventually, I heard faint footsteps moving away down the corridor, though I never heard a door open or close. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. I tried to rationalize it. Hallucinations, stress, lack of sleep. Maybe someone really had been there, playing a cruel prank. Maybe the eye wasn't as big as I thought. Everything looks distorted through that tiny glass circle. But the voice, I hear voices every day. I know how a human throat sounds. That thing was guessing. A few days later, I found myself in the building's laundry room, staring at a faded notice board while my clothes spun in the machine. There were handwritten notes pinned to the cork-lost keys, babysitting offers, someone selling a used couch, and one sheet of paper, faded and yellow. The handwriting was shaky and small. Don't open the door when IT knocks after midnight. It can't come in unless you let it. It learns your voice if you talk to it. It learns your face if you look at it. It never stops. There were scratch marks near the bottom of the paper, as if someone had tried to rip it down but changed their mind. There was no name, no date. I stood there, the hum of the dryer suddenly distant. The machine behind me beeped and I jumped so hard my shoulder jerked painfully. When I went back upstairs with my laundry, I avoided looking directly at my own door. The next night, I pushed a heavy bookshelf in front of the entrance. It wasn't big, but it made me feel better. I turned on the TV in the bedroom, closed the blinds, pushed my bed against the inner wall. It felt childish and ridiculous. Midnight approached anyway. I tried to pretend I didn't care. I lay on my side, facing the wall, forcing my eyes to stay on the cracks in the paint. I counted breaths, seconds, anything. At 12 a.m., my phone screen lit up of its own accord. No notification, no call, just the home screen, glaring in the dark. Then the knocking started. Knock, knock, knock. Even with the bookshelf, even from the bedroom, the sound was as clear as if it were happening right beside me. It thudded through the floor and walls, too solid, too heavy. Knuckles against wood, or something pretending to be knuckles. I pulled a blanket up to my face like it could protect me from sound. The knocking continued. After a while, the voice came again, muffled by the bookshelf, but still terribly clear. Let me in. It wasn't curious anymore. It sounded more confident, like it expected me to obey, like this was a conversation we'd been having for a long time, and I was late to my part. Let me in, let me in, let me in. Each repetition sounded slightly different, like it was trying to copy emotions it had heard somewhere. Impatience, pleading, annoyance. It didn't get any of them quite right. My phone vibrated suddenly in my hand, nearly making me drop it. Unknown caller. I hesitated, then answered with a shaking hand. Hello, my own voice replied. Let me in. I threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and landed face down on the carpet, still connected, my breath loud in the silence. From the hallway, The knocking grew louder, faster. Knock. The bookshelf scraped against the floor, shifting slightly. I heard the books inside thudding against one another. I clamped my hands over my ears and squeezed my eyes shut, pressing myself into the mattress. Then, suddenly, it stopped. No knocking, no voice, nothing. The silence was so complete, it hurt. Slowly, very slowly, I opened my eyes. The dim light from the TV flickered over the walls. My heart hammered, waiting for the next sound. Instead, something else happened. From the corner of the room, where my small mirror hung above the dresser, a whisper slid out. It didn't come from the door this time. It came from the reflection. Open it. I stared at the mirror. My reflection stared back at me, pale and wide-eyed. The blankets were pulled up to my chin. Everything looked exactly as it should, except my reflected lips were still moving, even though mine were not. Open the door, my reflected self whispered. It's cold out there. Don't be rude. I couldn't move. My throat was dry, my heart hammering in my chest so hard it hurt. In the glass, my face smiled. I did not. The smile grew wider, too wide, stretching the skin in ways that should have been painful. Let me in, my reflection said, but the voice was no longer mine. It was that layered wrongness from the hallway, wrapped up in a shape that looked like me. In the living room, something scraped softly across the floor, the bookshelf moving inch by inch. I grabbed a pillow and hurled it at the mirror. It hit with a dull thump and slid to the floor. The glass didn't crack, but the reflection was empty now. No me, no bed, just the dim shape of the room, slightly warped. I turned my back on it and didn't look again. I moved out 3 days later. The landlord didn't ask many questions. Someone else took the apartment almost immediately. I watched from the sidewalk as a young couple carried boxers inside, laughing, arguing about where to put the couch. I wanted to warn them, to run up, grab their arms, beg them not to stay there. But what would I say? Don't rent this place. There's something that knocks at your door and steals your face, if you look at it. So I did nothing. I left. The new apartment across town was smaller and older, but the walls felt thicker somehow, the doors heavier. The first night there I slept with all the lights on, every curtain shut, every closet door open so I could see inside. Nothing happened. No knocks, no whispers. I started to breathe again. I got a new job, new routine, new walk to the corner store. The old building became something from another life, a bad dream I'd awoken from. Weeks passed. I almost convinced myself it had been stress and paranoia. The note in the laundry room, the reflection eye, could file them away under exhaustion and loneliness. Then, one night I woke up, for no reason. The room was dark, but not too dark. The city light leaking through the curtains painted faint stripes on the ceiling. I lay there listening to the hum of the fridge and the occasional car passing outside, and then I heard it. 3 slow, soft knocks. Not from the front door, from the inside of the bedroom wall, right behind my head. Knock, knock, knock. For a long time, I didn't move. I stared at the shadowed ceiling, muscles locked, too afraid even to blink. It knocked again, same rhythm, same patience. Let me in, the voice murmured. It sounded like the wall itself was speaking, like the plaster and paint had grown a throat just to whisper those words. You moved, it said, almost thoughtfully, as if trying out conversation. You didn't say goodbye. I pressed my hands over my ears, but the voice slid past my fingers, curling into my thoughts like fog under a door. You can't leave a door, it said. You always carry one with you, between you and me, between inside and out. Another knock, this time from the wardrobe at the foot of the bed. Knock, knock, knock. Let me in, it said again, more gently now. You've already looked. I already know your face, so why keep pretending? My throat finally loosened enough for me to whisper, no. The words sounded small, childish. The voice paused. Something like amusement colored its next words. Not yet, it said. The knock stopped. The apartment became just an apartment again, Node. Quiet, ordinary. I lay awake until morning, staring at the door to my bedroom, watching the thin line of light creep around its edges as the sun came up. I used to think a door was a simple thing. Wood, hinges, lock, something you can close to keep the world out when you need to. Now I know better. The world doesn't always stay outside. Sometimes it finds the cracks. Sometimes it learns your voice and wears it like a mask. And sometimes Somewhere after midnight, when everything is quiet and weak and tired, it knocks, softly, patiently, like it has all the time in the world. Knock, knock, knock. If you ever hear it, wherever you are, whatever it sounds like, don't open the door. The first time I heard it, I thought it was my neighbor talking in his sleep. My bedroom wall shares a side with Tubi, thin old plaster that carries sound to well snoring, low TV murmurs, even the occasional argument over bills. I learned to live with it. You have to, in cheap city apartments. It was just after 3 in the morning when I woke up, staring at the ceiling, convinced something had pulled me out of sleep. At first I didn't hear anything, just the ordinary hush of the building at night, the pipe in the bathroom ticking as it cooled, a car passing far below, the faint hum of the fridge. I began to think it was just a bad dream. Then I heard it, a whisper, low, breathing, coming from inside the wall behind my head. Daniel, my name. I held my breath. Sometimes you think you hear your name in the rhythm of a fan, in the rustle of leaves, just a brain trying to attach familiarity to noise. That's what I told myself. I lay completely still, ears straining, silence. I finally exhaled, a shaky breath that felt too loud in my own chest. I turned onto my side, facing away from the wall this time, forcing myself to think of work tomorrow, of deadlines, of anything but how my name had sounded in that whisper. I must have fallen asleep again eventually, but the next night, it came back. It started at 2:47 a.m. this time. I know because I checked the clock the moment my eyes snapped open, like some part of me had been counting down even in sleep. I stared into the dark, listening. The whisper came softly, almost tender. Daniel. It was clearer now, closer, not muffled the way most sound is when it passes through walls. It was like someone had put their mouth right against the plaster on the other side. I swallowed and forced myself to sit up in bed, heart pounding. The room felt smaller, the shadows at the edges thicker. For a moment I thought about calling out, telling my neighbor to cut it out, or just asking if he was okay, but something stopped me. It wasn't just the fact that it had said my name, it was how it said it, the way the syllables dragged, like they were testing the shape of the word on an unfamiliar tongue. My skin prickled. It wasn't the voice of anyone I recognized. It wasn't quite deep or high. The tone shifted softly, like a radio that hasn't found the right station yet. I swung my legs out of bed and stood up. My knees were a little weak, but I walked toward the wall, one slow step at a time. The room was silent except for my own breathing. I pressed my ear against the cold plaster. For a few seconds, there was nothing. Then, so close, it felt like it was whispering directly into my skull. I heard it again. Daniel, I can hear you. I jerked back like I'd been slapped. My heel caught the edge of the rug and I stumbled, grabbing the bedside table to steady myself. My phone clattered to the floor, lighting up the room with a cold white glow. The whisper chuckled. The sound of it wasn't right. It wasn't warm or amused. It was like someone imitating laughter after hearing it once too slow, just a fraction too loud, all the wrong parts emphasized. I like it when you listen, it murmured. My throat went dry. I wanted to shout. I wanted to tell it to shut up, to the man who was there, but the words stuck in my mouth like cold gum. The only sound I managed was a hoarse, "Who are you?" The whisper fell silent. For a moment, I thought I'd imagined all of it, that it was a strange dream I hadn't yet fully shaken off. Then it answered. One word, heavy and pleased. Closer. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I knocked on 2B's door. No answer. I knocked again, louder. My knuckles stung. Finally, the door across the hall cracked open. Mrs. Torres from 3C peered out, her gray hair tied back, eyes sharp even this early. "He's not there," she said. "No one is." "The guy in 2B." I frowned. "When did he move out?" She opened the door wider, leaning on the frame. "Landlord had the place fumigated last week. Roach's place is still empty." "Why?" For a moment, I just stared at her. The words didn't make sense in my head. "Empty," I repeated slowly. "Yes, empty." She narrowed her eyes a little. "You didn't know." I shook my head. "I work late. I don't pay attention to who comes and goes." That was always my excuse. "Well, now you do," she said. "You okay? You look pale." "Yeah," I lied. "Didn't sleep well." She gave me a sympathetic sound and closed her door. I stood there in the hallway for a while, staring at 2B's door. It was sealed with a thin strip of yellow tape at the bottom. marked with some chemical warning. Empty. No neighbor. No TV. No one whispering late at night. I told myself I'd been dreaming, that my insomnia was getting worse, that my brain was filling the silence with its own echoes. But that night, I pushed my bed a foot away from the wall, just in case. The third night was worse. I tried everything to drown out the silence: music, a podcast, even some low-budget horror movies, so my brain would have something to latch onto that wasn't my own thoughts. Eventually, exhaustion dragged me under. I woke up in the dark, heart racing. My phone said 3:03 a.m. I didn't know what had woken me at first. Then I realized everything was off. The fan, the fridge's hum, even the faint city noise outside had gone strangled and distant, like I was underwater. There was only one sound left, a long, slow scrape. Not a whisper, not at first. Something was dragging itself along the inside of the wall. Scritch, scritch. I could feel it as much as hear. It's a faint vibration through the mattress, through the bed frame, through the floor. It moved left, then right, then up, like it was searching. My breath hitched. The scraping stopped directly behind my pillow. The wall felt suddenly colder on the back of my neck, even from a foot away. Silence. Then the whisper returned. "Daniel," it said, almost lovingly. I sat up fast, my heart slamming against my ribs. The blankets tangled around my legs like hands. In the faint light from the street, I could see the wall now. The plain white paint, the faint cracks running down like veins. Nothing else. "Go away," I managed. My voice sounded thin and pathetic in the quiet. The thing on the other side of the wall didn't move. I could feel it there, pressed close, listening. "Why?" it asked eventually. The words stretched oddly, like a rubber band pulled too far. The tone was wrong again, curious, but with no real emotion behind it. "Because I don't know you," I whispered. It laughed again, that broken imitation of humor. "I know you," it said. "You talk in your sleep. You cry sometimes. You wake up with your heart too fast. I hear you." My stomach turned to ice. "I don't cry," I said automatically, stupidly. "Yes you do," it crooned. "When you dream about the car, and the rain, and the lights that don't stop. When you dream about the sound of metal, and your brother screaming." I stopped breathing. I hadn't told anyone about that, not in years. Not even the therapist I quit seeing after 3 sessions. The accident, the rain, the way the headlights had carved through the night that belonged to a different life. One I'd buried long ago under work and noise and cheap food. "How do you know that?" I asked. The whisper pressed closer. I could almost feel its breath now, damp and cold, seeping through plaster that shouldn't let anything through. "I listen," it said simply. "There's not much else to do here." I stared at the wall. "What are you?" I asked. Silence again. Then, slowly, the scraping resumed. Up, down, side to side, as if it were tracing the outline of something. "Hungry," it said finally. Over the next few days I tried to pretend nothing had changed. I went to work. I answered emails. I said fine when people asked how I was. I drank more coffee. I avoided going home until late, walking extra blocks around the city just so I wouldn't have to open my door in the quiet building. But the whispers didn't stay in the night. The first time I heard it in daylight, I was brushing my teeth. The morning sun was coming in through the bathroom window, turning the cracked tiles gold. I was almost convincing myself that it had all been some elaborate series of nightmares. Then the water pressure in the shower pipe changed. A soft groan of metal echoed through the wall, and underneath it, like a second voice hidden in the first, I heard, "Daniel." I froze, toothbrush halfway to my mouth. Foam gathered at the corner of my lips. For a long moment I just stared at the reflection in the mirror, pale, tired, eyes too wide. "It's brighter out there," the voice murmured. "I don't like it, but I like you." I spat into the sink, my hand shaking. "You're not real," I said. "You're just in my head." The pipes rattled above me. A low scraping chuckle followed. "If I were in your head," it whispered, "you couldn't hear me with your hands over your ears." I slammed my palms over both ears anyway, pressing hard enough to make my jaw hurt. The world became muffled, dull, but the voice was right. I still heard it. "You can't block me out," it said pleasantly. "We're too close now." I didn't finish brushing my teeth. I grabbed my keys and left the apartment with toothpaste still burning my tongue. After that, sleep became a negotiation. Some nights, it was only breathing. Slow, steady, too aware. as if something enormous were lying along the length of the wall, its mouth inches from the plaster. Some nights it whispered my name over and over, sometimes fast, sometimes stretched into long, dragging vowels that made my skin crawl. Once, I woke up standing at the wall with my forehead pressed against it, my hands flat on either side of my head. I didn't remember getting out of bed. "I can feel your heartbeat," it said that time. "It's very loud here." I stumbled back, tripping over the edge of the mattress and falling hard. My tailbone screamed. I lay there panting, staring up at the ceiling as the whispering continued, soothing and relentless. "Closer," it urged. "You don't have to be afraid. It only hurts at the beginning." Something inside me cracked then. Maybe the part that still believed in simple explanations, bad dreams, stress, too much screen time. I grabbed my jacket and wallet and fled the apartment at 3 in the morning, like it were on fire. I spent the night in an all-night diner, drinking burnt coffee and staring at the greasy shine of the counter. The waitress asked if I was okay. I said yes. I thought about not going back. I should have stayed away. But where would I go? Another cheap apartment, another set of thin walls. What if it followed? What if it wasn't the place it was attached to, but me? So I went back, and that night, it spoke to me like it had been waiting. "You're late," it said as soon as I switched off the light. My hand froze on the lamp. "You feel thicker," it continued, "like you walk slower, like you're made of meat." I swallowed down bile. "I am made of meat," I said before I could stop myself. The wall vibrated with a soft, delighted sound. "I know," it whispered. "That's why I'm learning." I sat down on the edge of the bed, every muscle tight, learning what I asked, though I already knew I didn't want to hear the answer. "Where you end," it said. "Where I begin. Where the cracks are." Something scraped inside the wall again, but this time it wasn't random. It traced a shape, vertical, horizontal, a frame, a door. "I don't have a door," it murmured. "Not like you." I listened for so long, but no one knocked back. "Your world is very loud. Mine is very small." I pictured a narrow space inside the wall, dark, dusty, something huge, pressed into it, twisted into an impossible shape, all teeth and hunger and ears. "I found you," it said. "You're loud even when you're quiet. You ache, you remember, you regret. You were already cracked." Tears burned in my eyes. I didn't understand why that hurt more than anything else, it had said. Maybe because it was true. "What do you want?" I whispered. The voice dropped lower, softer, almost gentle. "I want out." A numbness spread through my legs. "You can't," I said. "There's a wall." The chuckle returned, that wrong layered sound. "There's always a wall," it agreed. "But walls can change. I'm learning. I know your name. I know your thoughts now. I know your dreams. Soon I'll know your shape." My pulse thundered in my ears. My shape, yes. Where your joints bend, where your skin pulls. How your jaw unhooks when you scream. I stood up so fast the bed frame squealed. "Stop," I said. My voice cracked. "Leave me alone." Silence. Then very faintly I heard the sound of fingernails, too many of them tapping along the inside of the wall. Tap, tap, tap. "Two choices," it said. "You open a door, or I do." "How? How would you open?" "From your side," it interrupted. "With your hands, with your teeth. You'll help. You already lean toward me in your sleep." I backed away until my shoulders hit the opposite wall. The room felt too narrow now, like it was closing in, crushing me between two hungry surfaces. "I'm not going to help you," I whispered. "You already are," it said. I don't remember falling asleep, but I must have. Exhaustion eventually drags you under no matter how terrified you are. When I opened my eyes again, the room was very dark. No streetlight, no glow from the alarm clock. The air felt thick, as if I were breathing through cloth. I tried to move and realized I couldn't. My arms and legs were pinned at my sides. Something rough scraped my cheek when I turned my head. It smelled of dust and old wood, and something metallic underneath, like dried blood. Panic slammed through me. "Easy," the voice murmured, inches from my ear. "You wriggle so much." I didn't scream. I couldn't. My chest was squeezed too tight. I managed a hoarse, broken sound instead, somewhere between a sob and a gasp. "You wanted a different story," it said. "Something very, very scary. A new one. We're inside it now." I realized then that I couldn't feel the mattress beneath me. No pillow, no blanket. just rough boards and something pressing in from all sides. Not a room, a space. Narrow, cramped, filled with breathing that wasn't mine. I brought you here, it whispered, into my small world, just for a moment, to show you, to see if you'd fit. My fingers brushed something in the dark, a curve like a jaw, teeth, too many teeth. The thing laughed, and the entire space shuddered. You're soft, it said approvingly. So easy to bend, see? Pain exploded through my arm as something twisted my wrist just a little too far. Not enough to break, but enough to promise that it could. I whimpered. It soothed. Not yet. There was a sound like wood tearing. Light knifed in from somewhere above. Harsh, yellow, wrong. I felt a sudden rush of air, cold on my sweat-soaked skin. Then I was back on my bed. The ceiling was above me again. The alarm clock glowed 3:33 a.m. The streetlight painted its usual pale bar on the floor. My body ached. My wrist throbbed with a deep, ugly pain. When I touched it, I felt bruises already forming in the shape of fingers. It's getting easier, the voice said from inside the wall. Bringing you here, taking you back. The wall is thinner now. I lay there shaking, clutching my damaged wrist, tears sliding silently into my hair. Soon, it said happily, we won't need the wall at all. I left the next day. No packing, no lease notice. I shoved what I could into a duffel bag with my good hand and walked out without looking back. I didn't care about the deposit. I didn't care about the landlord. I just needed distance. I slept in my car that night, parked in a crowded lot under bright lamps. Every few minutes, a car drove by. Voices drifted at the edge of hearing. The world felt loud and big and blessedly indifferent. I cracked the window just enough to breathe. For the first time in weeks, I started to relax. Then, just as I was beginning to drift, I heard it, faint, smiling, coming from the dashboard, from the steering column, from the thin metal door at my side. ... Daniel. I stared straight ahead, gripping the wheel until my knuckles went white. You carried the wall with you, it whispered. You're full of them, between skin and bone, between skull and brain, between what you show and what you hide. These days I hear it in hotel walls, in the faint buzz of fluorescent lights, in the hum of airplane cabins, sometimes in my own pulse, vibrating against my skull. Closer it still whispers, we're almost there. The scariest part isn't the first touch. It's the moment you realize there was never really a wall at all. At night, when the world goes quiet, it presses up against whatever surface is nearest, and it whispers my name through the walls.